What we're going to be talking about is my favorite tax advantage investment account. When I say that, most people think Roth IRAs, they think 401ks, and with all of those, they're double tax advantaged. And by double tax advantage, I mean they're either pre-tax and then tax deferred, or they're post-tax and they grow tax-free and they can be used tax-free. What a lot of people don't know is there is an account that is significantly more tax advantaged, and it's called the HSA. An HSA is simply a health savings account. It's by far my favorite account out there, and here's why. It reduces your taxable income today. It also reduces FICA taxes. So it's the only account that comes out before Medicare, Social Security, etc. Then those funds can be invested, they can grow tax-free, and then they can be used tax-free in the future. And the other great part about it is you can always refund yourself for prior expenses. So let's say you have an HSA the next 20 years, and next year you have a baby and it costs $5,000. 20 years from now, you can reimburse yourself for that $5,000 expense. So it gives you a ton of flexibility. A lot of times people hear about HSAs and they think, oh, great, I'm going to go elect into an HSA. I'm going to invest in it. But this isn't really how it works. You need to have a health plan that qualifies. Under the tax law, HSA plans must set a minimum deductible and limit and a maximum out-of-pocket cost for both individuals and families. So typically when you're going through your benefits, you get to look. As you look, it's typically going to say HSA eligible or not. Every once in a while, there'll be a health plan that doesn't say whether it's HSA eligible, and it might be, but I would say 99 times out of 100, it's going to say HSA eligible plan. So if you don't have an HSA eligible plan, then typically you have what's called an FSA. So an FSA is a flexible spending account. It is significantly worse than an HSA because you can't invest those dollars. The issue is that most people do not use an HSA properly. I think I need to separate this into kind of where you're at in your wealth building journey to let you know how to best use an HSA. Let's say that you are, somebody that is barely getting by and you have an HSA eligible plan. You might want to spend those HSA dollars on a yearly basis because you know that you don't have extra cash flow to cover this. So you use an HSA, it reduces taxes, then you get to spend it on healthcare tax-free. But if you're like most of my clients, very high income, high net worth, tax advantage accounts are super advantageous and they're only such a small part of your investments. So for most high net worth people, they're investing hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, if not more. They're doing their 401k, their backdoor Roths, etc. But then they're out of tax advantage options. And so if you use your HSA versus invest it, you're really giving up that big benefit. In the year 2025, an HSA, you can put in $8,550 as a family or $4,300 if you're single. I know, super weird. Most other years, like last year, it was $4,150 and $8,300. This year, they made it super weird where it's not $4,300 times 2. That would be $8,600. You can only do $8,550. How this works is you're going to say through payroll, hey, I want to put in that $8,550. One note here, though, is a lot of employers do match on your HSA. They might put in $500. They might put in $50 a month. They might put in $1,000. They might put in $1,500. I've seen it all the way up to a couple $1,000s. And what you need to know is that reduces what you can put in. So this is very different than a 401k. With a 401k, if you were going to put in $23,500 and they put in $5,000, it doesn't reduce that $23,500 max amount. That's actually on top of it. But with an HSA, it's different. With an HSA, you can put in $8,550 less your employer match. So if they put in $550, then you can only put in $8,000. So you're going to say, hey, great. Throughout the year, I want to put in the $8,550, assuming that there's no employer match. What happens is that gets withheld per paycheck. It comes out pre-FICA tax, like I said, comes out pre-state tax, and it comes out pre-Fed tax. Then those dollars go to an HSA account. Typically, what ends up happening is in this HSA account, you have to keep some amount in cash. Some places it's $1,000, some places it's $2,000. I've seen some that don't require it, but most times they do require you to keep some in cash. But then the amount above that is what can go get invested. And typically what happens is you have a fund lineup similar to a 401k. So they're going to give you, here's the options, here's the things that you can invest in, and you're going to pick those investments. Then that money is going to grow tax-free. You invested in, 80% US equities, 20% international, and that's just going to compound and grow tax-free for as long as you let it grow. And then what you can do is you can either take it out and use it on healthcare costs. And then what happens in retirement is if you don't use it for healthcare costs, it counts as income when you take it out. So you'd still get the tax deduction, you'd still get the tax deferred growth. It would serve very similar to an IRA. But the thing is, in retirement, you're going to have a lot of healthcare costs. That's what we typically see. You also can pay for long-term care tax-free. It is an option to use it for not not for healthcare costs, but most people end up using it for healthcare costs. Like I said, if you are a high income person, in most situations, what makes sense is to let this grow and use it sometime in the future. Tax-free growth is one of the most powerful tools that you have, and the goal is to allow it to compound for as long as possible. If you have healthcare costs on a yearly basis, I typically recommend using surplus, using extra cash in your checking account, use funds from your emergency fund, and then replenish after. Because if you choose to use it from the HSA, you've taken it out, you can't get that money back in. But if you take it from savings and worst comes to worst, you lose your job and you're struggling, you can always reimburse yourself back for your HSA, especially if you keep those receipts. So it gives you a lot more flexibility. I've talked about how this is pre-FICA tax. This is really important. If you make under $176,100 this year, then all of that comes out pre-FICA tax. You end up saving an additional 7.65%. But if you are over 176.1 over the Social Security wage base, then what ends up happening is this only ends up saving you about 1.45%. It's still a good savings tool, right? 1.45 plus you're a high income earner. So it's going to save you on Fed and state taxes. So this is still a really great tool. And still the biggest benefit is that, but I wanted to make sure I noted that. The other thing is sometimes you'll find that maybe your company is a little older, maybe they don't have great benefits, and the HSA does not have the ability to be invested. The cool thing about HSAs are that you can roll your HSA out while still working there. So you could once a year contribute through payroll and then roll it to Fidelity where you can invest in anything you want. And typically I advise that if you're under the Social Security wage base, so you still get that pre-FICA tax deduction. But if you're over and you don't really have good investment options, or you're an owner of an S Corp and you can't even do it through payroll, then sometimes we'll have clients just one-time deposit into an HSA at Fidelity. This allows you to still get the pre-state and Fed tax. You miss the FICA tax since it doesn't come out through payroll. That's the one downside. But then you can invest in whatever you want, and it has very low fees. An HSA is a health savings account. You have to have a high deductible plan that allows it. The money gets to go in tax-free, basically. So it's going to reduce FICA taxes, reduce state taxes, reduce Fed taxes, grow tax-free, can be used tax-free on healthcare, can reimburse yourself for prior year expenses while you were on an HSA eligible plan. It can really have a huge benefit. Again, I find people use HSAs incorrectly. They use it like an FSA, like it's use it or lose it, when in reality, most times what's actually going to be the most beneficial is to let that grow, take advantage of the tax-free growth, use cash on the sidelines. This is really how you build wealth in the most efficient way. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and go follow my page for more personal finance content. And as always, if you have any thoughts, please leave it in the comments below, and I promise to get back to each individual comment. See you next week.